I never expected to find anyone at the office that late. The building was usually a ghost town by the time I dragged myself away from the endless stack of reports and emails. Most nights, the only sound accompanying me was the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional creak of the old air conditioning system. I'd grown used to the quiet, almost comforted by it. But that night was different. I walked into the dimly lit corridor, the echo of my footsteps fading into the stillness. That's when I saw her. She was sitting alone in one of the glass-walled conference rooms, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of her laptop screen. Her elegance was striking, sleek dark hair falling effortlessly over her shoulders, eyes focused and intense as they scanned the screen. She looked like someone who belonged in boardrooms filled with polished executives, not an empty office past midnight. I hesitated, curiosity tugging at me. I'd seen her around the office before, always with a professional air and a calm, composed demeanor. But seeing her here, alone and bathed in the pale glow of artificial light, made her seem human. Approachable, even. I knocked gently on the doorframe, my voice slipping into the quiet room. "Burning the midnight oil, huh?" She glanced up, her expression momentarily startled before softening into a polite smile. "I could say the same about you." I chuckled, stepping into the room. "Yeah, well, deadlines don't wait for anyone. Especially not me." For a moment, we just looked at each other, the shared recognition of overworked exhaustion bridging the gap between us. Then she laughed, a light, genuine sound that seemed out of place in the sterile office environment. "I'm May, by the way," she said, extending a hand. "Daniel," I replied, shaking her hand with a warmth I hadn't expected to feel. Our conversation flowed easily from there, words exchanged over the quiet clatter of keyboards and the occasional yawn. I learned she'd recently joined the company, navigating the high-pressure demands of her new position with grace and determination. Yet, beneath her polished exterior, I caught glimpses of something else, a weariness not unlike my own. Minutes blurred into hours, the two of us immersed in a conversation that felt surprisingly natural. There was something refreshing about talking to someone who seemed to understand the endless grind, the loneliness of late-night work. Eventually, the office felt too cold, too impersonal for the warmth we'd somehow built between us. I found myself blurting out, "Do you want to get out of here? Maybe, continue this conversation somewhere less depressing." Mia's eyebrows lifted in surprise before her smile returned, brighter this time. "I'd like that." And just like that, the sterile isolation of the office melted away, replaced by a quiet thrill that left my pulse racing as we stepped out into the cool night air, the city humming softly around us. Neon signs flickered, and distant traffic murmured like a restless sea. Somehow, the crisp breeze made everything feel sharper, more alive. Mia's laughter danced between us as we walked, the conversation flowing with a natural ease I hadn't felt in years. She had this way of turning even mundane topics into something compelling, her words laced with intelligence and charm. "So, Daniel, are late nights at the office your idea of a good time?" she teased, her eyes glinting with playful curiosity. "Guilty," I admitted with a chuckle. "But only when there's an impossible deadline breathing down my neck." "What's your excuse?" "New job syndrome, I guess. Trying to prove I can keep up." Her smile faltered for a moment, a hint of vulnerability slipping through. "But I guess you already know how that feels." "More than I'd like to admit." We continued walking, neither of us in a hurry to part ways. Something about her drew me in, her confidence tempered by subtle hints of uncertainty, the way her gaze occasionally drifted as if her thoughts were miles away. "Do you want to grab a drink?" I offered. "There's a place not too far from here that's decent, if you're up for it." She tilted her head, considering the offer. "Actually, that sounds nice." But her hesitation was brief, her gaze slipping past me before settling back with a smile. "Would it be weird if I said I'd prefer somewhere quieter? Less crowded?" I hesitated, the answer coming out before I'd fully thought it through. "My place isn't far from here. We could continue talking there if you're comfortable with that." Mia's smile widened, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Bold move, Daniel." I felt heat rise to my cheeks, but I kept my composure. Or maybe just desperate for decent conversation that doesn't involve spreadsheets and sales reports. She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "All right. Lead the way." We walked side by side through the city's winding streets, conversation drifting between work frustrations and random musings. By the time we reached my apartment, the awkwardness of the invitation had faded into something else entirely, a shared curiosity that seemed to pull us closer. Inside, the familiar scent of coffee and old books mingled with the night's chill. I flicked on the lights, their soft glow filling the small but cozy space. Emma looked around, her gaze lingering on the cluttered bookshelf and the neglected guitar propped against the corner. "Nice place," she said, her tone sincere. "Feels lived in. Comfortable." "Thanks. It's not much, but it works." I gestured for her to sit, offering her a drink. She accepted, and soon we were settled on the worn-out couch, the city lights painting faint patterns across the walls. The conversation picked up where it left off, our words spilling out like old friends reconnecting after years apart. And yet, beneath the casual banter, something else simmered, an unspoken connection neither of us seemed willing to acknowledge just yet. The warmth of the apartment wrapped around us, a cozy contrast to the coolness outside. Emma cradled her glass, her fingers tracing the rim as if lost in thought. Yet her gaze kept returning to mine, drawn by an unspoken magnetism neither of us could ignore. "So, Daniel," she said, her voice softer now, layered with curiosity, "what do you do when you're not drowning in deadlines?" "Trying not to drown, mostly," I replied with a smirk. "But when I manage to come up for air, I mess around with the guitar. Read. Nothing too exciting." "Mess around with the guitar?" Her eyes sparkled with interest. "Now that sounds like something worth hearing. Maybe one day, when I'm actually good at it." The easy laughter between us settled into a comfortable silence. Emma glanced around the room again, her gaze lingering on the scattered remnants of my life, a half-finished novel on the coffee table, a sketchpad filled with restless scribbles. "You're a creative type. I can tell. Is it that obvious?" I asked, feeling a little exposed under her observation. "Yeah. It's in the little things." Her gaze flickered over the guitar, then back to me. "Like how you talk about music like it's more than a hobby. More like a lifeline." The truth of her words hit harder than I expected. I hadn't admitted that to anyone, not even myself. But Emma saw it, clear as day. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice sounding distant even to me. "It's the one thing that doesn't feel like work." "I get that." Her smile softened, tinged with something that felt like understanding. "Sometimes you just need something that's yours, you know? Something that makes everything else feel worth it." Our eyes met, the silence between us deepening into something tangible. Without thinking, I reached for her hand, my fingers grazing hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, her hand shifted slightly, her fingers intertwining with mine. The simple touch sent a ripple of warmth through me, a connection that felt both inevitable and terrifying. Mia's eyes searched mine, as if trying to decipher some hidden meaning in the closeness between us. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to betray the nerves beneath her calm exterior. "I didn't expect tonight to turn out like this." "Neither did I admitted. "But I'm not complaining." The seconds stretched, fragile and uncertain, before her lips curled into a faint smile. "Me neither." A weight seemed to lift from the room, the air between us charged with a new kind of energy. Whatever this was, it felt real. And that was enough for now. The hours slipped by, measured only by the dwindling wine and the easy flow of conversation. May had taken off her heels, curling her feet beneath her on the couch, her posture relaxed and open. Her laughter came easier now, her eyes dancing with amusement at every joke, every shared memory. We drifted from topic to topic, our words drawing out pieces of ourselves usually kept hidden. I told her about my childhood dreams of being a musician, about the sketches and half-finished songs cluttering my apartment. She spoke of her love for art, the way colors and textures spoke to her more clearly than words ever could. "Maybe we're both just trying to find something real," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the city lights twinkling through the window. "Maybe." I looked at her, my chest tightening with a feeling I couldn't quite name. Or maybe we just did. The room grew quiet, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with something unspoken, something waiting to be acknowledged. I reached out and brushed a strand of hair away from her face, my fingers lingering against her cheek. "Emma." Her name was a whisper, a question, an invitation. Her eyes met mine, a vulnerability that I hadn't seen before. And then, she closed the distance between us, her lips pressing softly against mine. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative and searching. But then it deepened, a spark catching fire as the rest of the world faded away. Time blurred. All I knew was the warmth of her skin, the softness of her touch, the way her breath mingled with mine. The intensity of it left me dizzy, my thoughts unraveling under the sheer force of sensation. We broke apart, breathing heavily, our faces inches from each other. The look in her eyes mirrored my own, a mixture of wonder and disbelief at how quickly things had changed. That was, I started, struggling to find words. Unexpected, she finished, her voice trembling slightly. But not unwelcome. The nervousness in her smile made her all the more beautiful. And I realized then that whatever had brought us together tonight, it felt right. Natural. We spent the rest of the night talking, our conversation broken only by occasional, stolen kisses. As dawn crept over the city, painting the room in soft shades of gold, neither of us seemed willing to let go of the moment. Maybe this was just a fleeting connection, a chance encounter that would fade with the morning light. Or maybe it was the beginning of something neither of us had dared to hope for. But for now, it was enough.